The giant widow stood before me, 8.5 feet of trembling strength, and whispered words that would have made a preacher faint. "I need you to touch me," she said. "Don't stop." Her hands shook as she lifted her skirt, revealing scars 4 inches wide. Iron bands. Torture marks. The price she paid for refusing to run while her husband bled out in a ditch. But that came later. First, I had to survive the night she circled my house in the darkness, deciding whether to kill me or trust me. This is how a broken rancher met a hidden giant, and how we both learned what it means to be seen. Folks always ask me how a man like me ended up with a woman like Kate. Truth is, I didn't find her. She found me, or maybe we found each other when we'd both given up on being found. I'm sitting here by the fire now, 67 years old, watching the flames dance the way they did 30 years ago when all this started. My daughter Mary, youngest of four, she's the one asking tonight. She's 25 and curious, got her mama's eyes in my stubborn streak. She wants to know the story, the real one, not the cleaned up version folks tell at church socials. So I'll tell it, every bit of it. But I got to warn you first. This ain't a pretty story. It's a true one. And truth has a way of being messier than fiction. Your mama whispered something to me once that would have made a preacher faint, dead. "I need you to touch me," she said. "Don't stop." And before you get ideas, child, let me tell you what she really meant. Let me tell you how a broken rancher met a hidden giant and how they both learned what it means to be seen. It started in 1887, New Mexico territory. I was 37 then, 3 years a widower, 3 years running from the ghost of my failure. My wife Anna had died of typhoid 3 years prior. I nursed her for 2 weeks while the fever burned her up from the inside. Watched her waste away to nothing while I stayed healthy as a horse. The town back in Missouri, they whispered about it. Said maybe I didn't fight hard enough. Said maybe, just maybe, I wanted her gone. Grief does funny things to people. Makes them cruel without meaning to be. So I sold everything. The house, the land, the memories. Took what little money I had and rode west until the road thinned into dirt and the dirt into nothing. I was looking for a place where nobody knew my name, where nobody knew my shame. That's how I found Blackstone. The town appeared on the horizon like a mirage. One moment there was nothing but city and dust in the blue vault of heaven. The next there were buildings, low structures of adobe and weathered wood clustered around a main street that looked like it had given up on ambition years ago. I rode in at midday. The sun was brutal, the kind of heat that makes the air shimmer and dance. My horse, a bay mare I'd named Patience, was tired. So was I. We'd been riding for 3 weeks straight, sleeping rough living on jerky and creek water. The town was quiet. Too quiet. A few men stood in the shade of the general store watching me with eyes that measured and judged. A woman hurried across the street, pulling her child close as I passed. The child stared at me with wide eyes, curious and afraid. I tied Patience to the hitching post outside what looked like a saloon. The sign above the door said the lucky strike, but the paint was peeling and the luck I figured had run out a long time ago. Inside, it was cooler, darker. My eyes took a moment to adjust. There were 3 men at the bar nursing drinks that looked like they'd been nursing them for hours. The bartender, a thick man with a scar running from his temple to his jaw, looked up as I entered. His expression didn't change. Didn't welcome. Didn't reject. Just observed. "I want a whiskey," I said, "and information." The bartender didn't move. Just stared. "I got money," I added, pulling out a silver dollar and setting it on the bar. The 3 men at the other end of the bar turned to look at me. One of them, a tall fellow with a beard that reached his chest, spat tobacco juice into a tin cup. "We don't serve strangers who ask questions," he said. "I'm not asking questions," I replied. "I'm buying whiskey. The information part is optional." The bartender seemed to consider this. Then he reached for a bottle, poured 2 fingers into a glass that had seen better days and slid it toward me. The dollar disappeared into his pocket. I drank. The whiskey burned going down, but it was honest burn. The kind that reminds you you're alive. You looking to settle or just passing through, a voice asked. I turned. The voice belonged to a man I hadn't noticed before, sitting at a table in the corner. He was maybe 45 with kind eyes and the look of someone who'd learned to survive by being useful. He wore a clean shirt and an apron. "A merchant, I guessed." "Settle," I said. "If I can find land nobody wants." The man smiled, but it was a sad smile. There's the Brennan place, he said. 20 acres, spring water, decent barn, been empty 2 years. Why's nobody bought it, I asked. The room went quiet, the kind of quiet that has weight. The man in the corner stood and walked over to me. He extended his hand. Owen Briggs, he said. I run the general store. I shook his hand. Garrett Thorne, Owen gestured to an empty table. Let's sit. This conversation requires sitting. We sat. Owen looked around the room, then leaned in close. His voice dropped to just above a whisper. The Brennan place, he said, is good land. Best in the county. There's an underground spring that could water 10 ranches. Thomas Brennan, the man who owned it, he was a good man. Strong, fair, built that ranch with his bare hands. What happened to him? I asked. Owen's jaw tightened. Dalton brothers happened to him. They wanted the land. Wanted the water rights. Thomas wouldn't sell. So they killed him, ambushed him on the road back from town, shot him 6 times and left him in a ditch. I felt my stomach tighten. The law do anything. Owen laughed, but there was no humor in it. The law here is Sheriff Clayton Wade, and Wade's pocket is deep enough to hold Dalton money, so they got away with it. They got away with murder, Owen said, but they didn't get the land. Why not because of her? Her, Owen sat back studying me. His widow, Kate Brennan, 8.5 feet tall, they say, maybe 9, strong enough to lift a horse. Killed one of the Dalton brothers with her bare hands when they came for the ranch after Thomas died. Broke his neck like a twig. I must have looked skeptical because Owen held up his hand. I know how it sounds, but I saw her once, years ago before Thomas died. She's real, Mr. Thorne. Real as you and me. And she's been living on that land alone for 2 years, keeping everyone away. The town thinks she's cursed, Owen continued. They say the land is haunted, that at night you can hear her crying, or maybe it's the wind, or maybe it's worse. You believe that, I asked. I believe, Owen said carefully, that Kate Brennan is a woman who's been hurt too much and left alone too long. I believe she's dangerous if crossed, and I believe that land will either make you or break you. I drank the rest of my whiskey. How much? For the land, for the land. Owen named a price. It was almost nothing. The kind of price that comes with strings attached with history, with blood. I'll take it, I said. Owen looked at me for a long time. Then he nodded. I'll draw up the papers. You can move in tomorrow if you want. But Mr. Thorne, let me give you some advice. Don't go to the cottonwoods at dusk. And if you see her, don't run. Running makes it worse. What should I do? Owen stood. He put his hand on my shoulder. That friend you'll have to figure out yourself. Every man who's tried to tell Kate Brennan what to do has ended up regretting it. I spent the night in a boarding house that smelled of old cooking and older regrets. Couldn't sleep. Kept thinking about what Owen had said, about Thomas Brennan and his giant widow, about land that nobody wanted but everybody feared. In the dark, I thought about Anna, about the way she looked at me in those final days, eyes bright with fever, asking me if I'd done everything I could. I'd done everything. But sometimes everything isn't enough. Maybe that's why I was willing to take a chance on cursed land. When you've already lost what matters most, what's left to be afraid of? Dawn came slow and red. I collected my things, paid the boarding house keeper, and met Owen at the general store. He had the papers ready, simple documents that transferred ownership of the Brennan place to me. I signed in where he indicated, paid in cash. Owen gave me a map, hand-drawn but detailed. It showed the route to the ranch about 5 miles northwest of town. He also loaded my saddlebags with supplies. Coffee flour, salt pork beans, enough to last a week. One more thing, he said, and handed me a Winchester rifle. It was used but well maintained, just in case, he added. Just in case of what? Whatever you find out there. I rode out of Blackstone at mid-morning. The sun was already high and hot. Patience seemed eager to leave the town behind. Maybe she felt the same unease I did. The sense that we were being watched by unfriendly eyes. The land changed as I rode. The scrub gave way to grassland, dry and yellow in the late summer heat. In the distance, I could see mountains. The Sangre de Cristo range rising like the bones of the earth against the sky. Beautiful and terrible at the same time. The ranch appeared suddenly emerging from a fold in the land. I crested a low rise, and there it was. 20 acres of fenced pasture, most of the fences broken or leaning. A barn that tilted to one side like a drunk, trying to stay upright. A house of adobe and wood that looked like it was breathing, the walls expanding and contracting as the wind pushed through gaps in the boards. I rode closer. The burnt fence posts stood like grave markers, blackened and twisted. The barn door hung from one hinge, creaking in the breeze. There were no cattle, no chickens, no signs of life, but there were signs of someone. I dismounted and tied Patience to what was left of a hitching post. Walked slowly toward the house, one hand on the rifle. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of sage and dust and something else. Something burnt. Old fire. Old violence. The porch steps groaned under my weight. The door was closed but not locked. I pushed it open. It swung inward with a sound like a scythe. Inside the house was dim. Dust motes danced in the shafts of light that came through cracks in the walls. The furniture was simple. A table, two chairs, a stove. Everything sized for normal people. Everything covered in a fine layer of dust. But there were things that didn't belong. A coat hanging on a peg near the door. A coat that would fit someone twice my size. Boots by the hearth. Boots that were easily 2 feet long. On the table, a cup. It looked recent, as if someone had drunk from it this morning. I stood very still, listening. The house creaked and settled around me. Wind whistled through the moss. But there was something else. A feeling. The sense of being observed. I stepped back outside. The sun was lower now, painting the land in shades of gold and amber. I walked around the house, rifle ready, but not aimed, looking for any sign of the woman Owen had described. Behind the house, I found a line stretched between two posts. On it hung clothes, drying in the wind, dresses, a work shirt, all of them enormous. The dresses were easily 10 feet long. The shirt had sleeves that would drag on the ground if I wore it. So she was real. I looked toward the line of cottonwood trees that marked the creek, maybe 300 yards from the house. The trees were tall, their leaves silver green in the fading light. Between me and them, the land was open, exposed. Don't go to the cottonwoods at dusk, Owen had said, but I've never been good at following advice. I decided to spend the night in the house, figure things out in the morning. I brought Patience into the barn, gave her what water I could find in the trough, and a nosebag of oats. She seemed nervous, kept looking toward the cottonwoods and snorting. Easy, girl, I said, stroking her neck. Just wind. But it wasn't just wind, and we both knew it. I built a fire in the stove, cooked some beans and salt pork. The food was tasteless but filling. Outside, the sun set in a blaze of red and purple, beautiful enough to hurt. I barricaded the door with one of the chairs. Not that it would stop much, but it would make noise if someone tried to enter. I laid out my bedroll near the stove, kept the rifle within reach. The night came on fast and complete, no moon. Just stars, brilliant and cold and indifferent. I lay there listening. The wind never stopped. It moved through the house like something alive, finding every gap, every weakness. The walls breathed, the floorboards creaked. Normal sounds for an old house. Then I heard the footsteps. Slow, heavy, deliberate. Boom, boom, boom. I sat up, hard hammering, reached for the rifle. The footsteps were outside, circling the house. Boom, boom, boom. Each step made the ground tremble. Or maybe that was just my fear. I moved to the window, pressed myself against the wall, tried to see out. But it was too dark. Just shapes, shadows. The footsteps stopped. Silence. I waited, barely breathing. Then movement. A shadow passed in front of the window. Tall. So tall, the top of the shadow was level with the eaves of the house, 8 feet up, at least. I should have called out. Should have identified myself. But my throat was closed tight with fear. The shadow paused. I could feel eyes on me, though I couldn't see them, could feel the weight of observation, of judgment. Then the shadow moved away. The footsteps resumed, moving toward the barn. I heard Patience whinny, heard her hooves stamping. But then nothing. The footsteps continued past the barn, fading into the distance, toward the cottonwoods. I stayed by the window until dawn, rifle across my knees, watching the darkness slowly give way to gray light. When the sun finally rose, I felt like I'd aged 10 years in one night. I stepped outside, exhausted but alive. The morning was cool, the air clean. Birds were singing, normal sounds, daylight sounds. But there on the porch was something that hadn't been there before. A bucket of fresh water, clear and cold, and beside it stacked neatly enough firewood to last a week. I stared at them. Someone had been here, had brought water, had chopped wood, while I'd been inside terrified and useless. I picked up the bucket, drank deeply. The water was sweet, perfect. I looked toward the cottonwoods. In the daylight, they looked peaceful, inviting. Whoever she was, whatever she was, she'd had every opportunity to harm me. Instead, she'd left water and wood. Maybe Owen was wrong. Maybe the stories were wrong. Or maybe I was about to find out just how right they were. I spent the first week making the ranch livable, fixed what fences I could, patched the barn roof, cleaned the house. Simple work, but it felt good, purposeful. And every morning I found the same thing: fresh water, more firewood, sometimes vegetables from a garden I hadn't found yet. Squash, tomatoes, beans. I never saw her, but I saw the signs. Footprints in the soft earth near the creek. Massive footprints pressed deep into the mud. The stride between them was impossibly long, 6 feet at least. On the fifth day, I started following the tracks. They led from the house to the barn, to the creek, and back to the cottonwoods. Always the cottonwoods. The grove was larger than it looked from the house. The trees grew thick here, their roots drinking from the creek that ran year-round. It was cooler under the canopy, shaded in green, a different world from the harsh sun of the open range. I found her camp in the heart of the grove. It was simple: a fire pit, stones arranged in a circle, a blanket woven from wool and big enough to cover a wagon, a few cooking implements, a crude wooden cross driven into the ground near the largest tree. The cross had words carved into it. I knelt to read them. Thomas Brennan, beloved husband, 1877 to 1885. So this was his grave, and she'd been living here guarding it for 2 years. I heard the sound of water, running water. The creek was close. I moved toward it, careful to make noise, not wanting to startle anyone. That's when I saw her. She was kneeling by the creek, washing something in the water. Her back was to me. Even kneeling, she was taller than a man standing. Her shoulders were broad, her arms thick with muscle. She wore a black dress, faded and patch cinched at the waist. Her hair, black as midnight, fell in a braid down her back. I should have announced myself, should have called out, but I just stood there, frozen by the sight of her. She finished washing and stood. And when she stood, the world tilted. 8.5 feet, maybe more. Tall enough that her head was level with the lower branches of the cottonwoods. But it wasn't the height that took my breath. It was the way she moved, graceful despite her size, careful as if she was used to being gentle in a world that wasn't built for her. She turned, saw me. We stared at each other across the clearing. Two strangers, two survivors. Her face was not what I expected, beautiful in a way that defied easy description. Strong jaw, deep brown eyes that held oceans of old pain. Weathered skin that spoke of years in the sun. She was maybe 34, 35, around my age. But it was her expression that struck me. Not anger, not fear, resignation, as if she'd been expecting this moment, dreading it, knowing it had to come. I raised my hands slowly, showing I was unarmed. Left the rifle back at the house. I don't want trouble, I said. My voice sounded strange in the quiet of the grove. This is my land now, bought legal from the bank. She didn't move, didn't speak. I continued, feeling like a fool. Your husband's land. I didn't know he was dead. Didn't know about you. I'll leave if you want. Just tell me. Still nothing. I lowered my hands. Look, I said I'm not here to cause problems. I'm just a man who needed a place to disappear. Same as you, I figure. Something in her expression changed. A crack in the armor. Legal, she said. Her voice was low, steady, not wild, not monstrous, just tired. They sold what they were too scared to steal. I took a step closer. Stop, when she tensed. The bank gave me papers. Papers, she repeated. The words sounded like an insult. Thomas had papers too. Didn't stop the Daltons from putting 6 bullets in him. I'm not the Daltons, I said. She laughed then, a bitter sound. No, you're just the next man who thinks he can own what's mine. I didn't know what to say to that, so I tried the truth. I lost my wife 3 years ago. Town blamed me for not saving her. I came west to get away from the blame. from the shame. I bought this land because nobody else wanted it, because I thought maybe I could start over, build something, be something other than a failure. The words hung in the air between us. She studied me, really looked at me for the first time, and I could see her making calculations, weighing risks, deciding if I was telling the truth or just another liar in a world full of them. "What's your name?" she asked finally. "Garrett Thorne." She nodded slowly. "I'm Kate Brennan. This was my husband's land, before it was yours, before the bank stole it." A long silence stretched between us. Birds called, the creek murmured. The wind moved through the cottonwoods like whispered conversations. "I'm sorry," I said, "for your loss, for the land, for all of it." "Sorry doesn't change anything," she replied. "No," I agreed. "It doesn't. But maybe we can figure something out. You've been leaving me water, wood, food. That's more kindness than I've known in 3 years. Let me return it. How work the land with you, build it back up. I need hands. You need—" I paused, searching for the right words. "Proof you're not a ghost." She flinched at that, as if I'd struck her. "They call me that," she said quietly. "The ghost, the curse, the monster. You're none of those things," I said. She looked down at her hands. They were scarred, weathered, strong enough to break bones. "I killed a man," she said. "Frank Dalton. When they came for me after Thomas died, I broke his neck with my hands, felt his bones snap. 3 years, and I can still feel it. You defended yourself." She met my eyes again. I enjoyed it. For 2 seconds, I enjoyed feeling strong instead of scared. "What does that make me human?" I said. "Being angry at the people who hurt you. That's not monstrous. That's human." She seemed to consider this. Then slowly she shook her head. "You don't know me. Don't know what I'm capable of." "Maybe not," I said, "but I know you've had every chance to hurt me this week and you haven't. You've brought me water instead." "That tells me something. It tells you I'm lonely," she said. "Not kind, lonely." "Then let's be lonely together," I offered. "Work the land, share the trouble when it comes. And Kate, it will come. The Daltons won't stop." She looked past me toward the house visible through the trees. "I can't go back there," she said. "To the house. It's full of him. Full of memories." "Then don't," I said. "Stay here, in the cottonwoods. I'll stay in the house. We'll work dawn and dusk. That's all. Just work." She was quiet for a long time. So long I thought she'd refuse. Then she nodded. Once, just a small movement of her head. "But I don't shake hands," she added. "Not anymore." "Why not?" "Because I'm afraid I'll crush yours. Because I don't know my own strength. Because I've forgotten what gentle feels like." I understood then. The loneliness, the fear of herself, the 2 years of isolation, not just from people, but from human touch. "That's all right," I said. "We don't need to shake hands. A nod is enough." She looked at me with something like gratitude, something like hope, and that nod I realized was worth more than 1,000 promises. We had a bargain. An understanding between two broken people trying to survive on land that had seen too much blood. What I didn't know then was that bargains with broken people are always more complicated than words. That loneliness is a kind of hunger that simple companionship can't always feed. And that the Dalton brothers weren't done with Kate Brennan. Not by a long shot. The first week of our arrangement was marked by silence and careful distance. Kate stayed in her camp among the cottonwoods. I stayed in the house. We worked the land together, but we didn't speak much. Didn't need to. There's a language in shared labor that doesn't require words. At dawn, I'd find her already working. Mending fence posts that would take me an hour to lift, she handled like kindling. Hauling water from the creek in buckets I could barely carry empty, she made look effortless. I contributed what I could. My knowledge of ranching, my ability to work leather and rope, my skill with tools and planning. We fell into a rhythm. She would work the heavy labor. I would work the detail. Together we made progress. By the end of the week, the barn was straight again. The fences no longer leaned like old men. The house had fewer gaps in its walls. On the 7th day, I built something. A chair, sized for her. I'd measured her height as best I could from observation. 8 feet 6 inches near as I could figure. So I built a chair with a seat 4 feet off the ground with a back tall enough to support her shoulders with arms wide enough for her frame. I left it on the porch without a word. That evening when the sun was setting and painting the world in shades of amber and gold, I saw her approach the house. She stopped at the porch, looked at the chair, touched it gently, running her scarred fingers over the wood. She didn't sit, just stood there touching it for the longest time. Then she walked back to the cottonwoods. But the next morning the chair was gone. And when I went to the grove to start work, I saw it there, in her camp, positioned by the fire pit. Progress, I thought. Small, but real. The storm came on the 8th day. I woke to green sky, that particular shade of green that means trouble. The air was thick, heavy, pressing down like a weight. The birds had gone silent. Even the wind had stopped, leaving an eerie stillness that made the hair on my neck stand up. I stepped outside. Kate was already there, standing in the yard looking at the sky. "Tornado," she said without looking at me. "Big one. We need to secure everything. How long hour? Maybe less." We worked fast, brought patients into the barn, secured the door with crossbeams, moved anything loose inside the house or barn, covered the well, battened down the chicken coop I'd started building. The cattle, 30 head I'd bought just 2 days prior, were restless, sensing the danger, lowing and stamping in their pen. "We need to move them," Kate said, "to the low ground by the creek. Less wind." She was right. Together we drove the cattle toward the creek bed. Kate's presence alone was enough to move them. They feared her size, but they also seemed to sense her competence. They followed. We just gotten them settled when the wall hit. It wasn't wind, not really. It was more like the fist of God slamming down on the earth. The sky opened. Rain came sideways, driven by wind that screamed and howled. The temperature dropped 20 degrees in seconds. I could barely see, could barely stand. The barn, Kate shouted over the roar. The roof, I looked. One of the main support beams had cracked, couldn't take the stress. The whole roof was seconds from collapsing. We ran. The wind tried to knock us down with it every step. Debris flew past. A fence post sailed by my head, missing by inches. We reached the barn. The beam was failing, groaning under the load. Kate didn't hesitate. She moved under it, crouched and lifted. Her legs trembled with the effort, muscles straining, but she held. "Brace it," she grunted. I scrambled up the ladder, grabbing tools and nails. My hands shook, but I worked fast. Nailed cross beams, added supports. The roof creaked and settled, but it held. Then lightning struck. Close. Too close. The cottonwood nearest the barn exploded in a shower of sparks and flame. Fire caught in the dry grass despite the rain. Kate set down the beam carefully and ran. I followed. We fought the fire with buckets and dirt and our bare hands. The wind helped and hindered spreading the flames, but also bringing rain. In the chaos, something happened. The barn door, weakened by the repairs, swung open. A support beam, the one we'd just fixed, began to slip again. I was underneath trying to stamp out fire when I heard Kate scream. "Look out!" I looked up, saw the beam falling, too fast to dodge. Then Kate was there, moving faster than anything her size should move. She caught the beam one-handed mid-fall, caught it like it weighed nothing. Her other hand grabbed my collar, yanked me out of the way. We fell together in the mud and ash. The beam crashed down where I'd been standing. Kate's face was inches from mine. Rain streamed down her cheeks. Her eyes were wide, terrified. "You could have died," she said. "So could you," I replied. She stared at me, and in that moment, something shifted. Some wall between us cracked and fell. The storm raged on, but we barely noticed. We just lay there in the mud, looking at each other, seeing each other for the first time. When the tornado finally passed, when the rain slowed to a drizzle and the wind died to a whisper, we sat up. The barn was damaged, but standing. The house was intact. The fire was out. We'd survived. Kate stood, offered me her hand. I took it. Her grip was gentle, careful. She pulled me to my feet like I weighed nothing. "Thank you," I said. She didn't let go of my hand, just looked at it, at our hands together. Hers so large it made mine look like a child's, but warm, real. "I haven't touched anyone in 2 years," she said quietly. "Not even a handshake." "Neither have I," replied. "Not like this." We stood there holding hands in the aftermath of the storm while the world dripped and settled around us. Finally she spoke. "You can come inside, to my camp, just for tonight. The storm's not done." I nodded. "All right." We walked together to the cottonwoods. Her camp seemed untouched, protected by the thick canopy of trees. The fire pit was wet but could be rebuilt. The chair I'd made was still there. Kate built a new fire with practiced ease. I helped where I could. Soon we had flames warmth light against the gathering darkness. We sat, me on a log, her in the chair, the fire between us. The silence was comfortable now, companionable. After a while, Kate spoke. When Thomas died, I thought I died too. Thought the part of me that could feel anything good was gone. She paused, searching for words. A thing, a ghost, something people feared instead of knew. You're not a thing, I said. You're Kate. She smiled, but it was sad. You don't know me well enough to say that. Maybe not. I agreed, but I know you saved my life today. I know you've been kinder to me than anyone has in 3 years. That's enough to know you're human. She looked at the fire. Her face lit by the dancing flames was beautiful in its sorrow. I killed a man with these hands, she said, holding them up. Felt his bones break. And for just a second, just 1 second, I was glad. Does that sound human to you? Yes, I said without hesitation. Being angry at people who hurt you, wanting them to pay, that's as human as it gets. What matters is what you do after. And you didn't become a killer, Kate. You became a protector of this land, of your husband's memory. She was quiet for a long time. Then so softly I almost didn't hear and thank you. We stayed by the fire until dawn, talking sometimes, silent others. And when the sun finally rose, painting the cottonwoods in shades of gold, I realized something. For the first time in 3 years, I didn't feel alone. Neither, I suspected, did she. That was when everything changed. When the careful distance we'd maintained began to close. When two broken people started to imagine that maybe, just maybe, they could build something from the pieces. But the world wasn't done with us yet. Not by a long shot. The days after the storm brought a kind of peace I hadn't known in years. Not the peace of silence or solitude. Something different. The peace of shared purpose. Kate moved into the barn. Not the house, not yet. She said the house was still too full of Thomas, too heavy with memory. But the barn she could manage. We cleared out a corner, built a partition for privacy. I fashioned a bed frame from thick timber strong enough to hold her weight. She stuffed a mattress with prairie grass and wool from sheep I didn't know we had, until she showed me the small flock grazing beyond the creek. Thomas kept them, she explained. I've been shearing them alone for 2 years, selling the wool in town through Owen. You go into town? She shook her head. Owen comes out. Once a month. He's the only one who does. We established a routine. Breakfast together at dawn. Kate cooked and she was good at it. Better than good. She'd learned from her mother, she told me, back before the growing started. Before she'd become what she called unusual. I was normal until 12, she said one morning, flipping cornmeal cakes on a skillet that looked toy-sized in her hands. Woke up one day and my feet didn't fit my shoes. By 13, I was 6 feet. By 15, 7. It stopped around 20. 8 feet 6 inches. That's where I stayed. The doctors didn't know what to make of me. Called it a miracle. Called it a curse. My father called it God's punishment for some sin he must have committed. My mother just held me and cried. Where are they now? Dead. Fever took them when I was 23. Thomas found me a year later, working in a traveling show. They billed me as the giantess of the plains, made me stand on a platform while people paid a nickel to stare. She flipped the last cake, her jaw tight with old anger. Thomas saw the show in Kansas City, came back the next night, and the next. On the 4th night, he waited by the tent after, asked if I wanted to leave. Just like that, just like that. I asked him why. He said, because you look like you're dying inside and nobody should have to die like that. She set a plate in front of me. 3 perfect cornmeal cakes, butter melting on top. So I left with him. Married him 2 weeks later. Built this ranch together. Had 8 good years before the Daltons took it all away. I'm sorry, I said. She sat across from me with her own plate. Don't be. I got 8 years of being human instead of a curiosity. That's more than most people like me get. We ate in comfortable silence. The morning sun slanted through the barn doors, painting everything gold. After breakfast, we worked. The fences were nearly done. The barn roof was solid. We dug a new well closer to the house. Started planning for cattle expansion come spring. Kate had a mind for the business side of ranching. She knew market prices, knew when to buy and sell, knew which breeds did well in New Mexico territory and which would founder. Thomas taught me, she said when I commented on it, said a ranch is as much arithmetic as sweat. She also had a sense for the land itself, knew where water was likely to be underground, knew which grass the cattle preferred, knew the signs of weather changing days before it arrived. We made a good team. My detail work and her strength, my shooting and her strategic thinking, my past as a failure and her past as a spectacle. Two broken things that somehow fit together. The third week, Owen Briggs rode out. He came at midday, his wagon loaded with supplies, coffee, sugar, flour, salt, things I'd requested in a note I'd left at his store. He also brought news which I suspected was the real reason for the visit. Kate was working by the creek when Owen arrived. I saw her straighten, watching from a distance, not approaching, not hiding either, just observing. Owen climbed down from his wagon, stretched his back. "Mr. Thorne," he called, "you're looking well." "The land suits me," I replied. He glanced toward Kate. "And the company that too." Owen smiled. He had a kind face, Owen, the face of a man who'd seen hard things but refused to become hard himself. "She lets you live," he said. "That's further than most get. We have an arrangement, so I see." He started unloading supplies. "Town's talking," he added casually, "about the smoke from your chimney, about the fixed fences, about you and her working together. Let them talk. Talking's fine. It's what comes after talking that worries me." He set down a sack of flour, lowered his voice. "The Daltons are back in town, Jake and Cole. They've been asking questions." "What kind of questions about Kate? About whether she's real or just stories? About whether you'd be willing to sell?" "I'm not selling." That's what Thomas said. Owen's words hung heavy in the air. I helped him unload the rest of the wagon in silence. When we finished, he pulled out a tobacco pouch, offered it to me. I declined. He rolled himself a cigarette with practiced ease. "Can I give you some advice, Mr. Thorne?" I nodded. "Don't underestimate the Daltons. Jake's the smart one. Calm, patient, makes him more dangerous than his brother Cole, who's all temper and muscle. They've been planning something for 2 years, waiting. Now that you're here, they'll make their move. What do you think they'll do?" Owen lit his cigarette, inhaled deeply. "They want the spring, the underground water rights. That's worth $50,000, maybe more. Thomas wouldn't sell. You won't sell. So they'll find another way." "Like what?" He looked toward Kate again. She was still by the creek, watching. "Like convincing the territory that Kate's a public menace. Get her arrested or committed. Then the land reverts and they can buy it legal. Can they do that? Sheriff Wade would help them. For the right price." Owen tapped ash from his cigarette. "But there's another way this could go. How you could marry her." I stared at him. "Legal marriage," Owen continued, "means the land is jointly owned. Can't be taken without both signatures. And Kate's not going anywhere, which means the land stays put. I barely know her," he smiled. "You know her well enough to trust her with your life. Saw how she looked at you just now. How you looked at her. Sometimes knowing someone isn't about time, it's about truth." I didn't know what to say to that. Owen finished his cigarette, crushed it under his boot. "Think about it. And Mr. Thorne, be careful. The Daltons don't play fair. They play to win." He climbed back onto his wagon, tipped his hat, and rode away. I stood there long after he'd gone, thinking about what he'd said. About marriage. About danger. About the Daltons and their patience. Kate approached slowly. She'd been waiting for Owen to leave. "What did he say?" she asked. "That trouble's coming." She nodded like she'd expected nothing less. "It always does." That night, I told Kate everything Owen had said, about the Daltons asking questions, about the water rights, about Sheriff Wade. We sat by her fire in the cottonwood grove. The night was cool, autumn coming on. Stars brilliant overhead. "They'll come," Kate said. "It's just a matter of when. We can prepare." She shook her head. "You can't prepare for men like the Daltons. They don't fight fair. They fight to win. Then we'll fight smarter." She looked at me across the flames. Her eyes reflected the firelight, making them seem to glow. "You should leave Garrett, sell to them, take your money and go. This isn't your fight. Yes, it is. Why, you've only been here 3 weeks. Because I searched for the right words because I'm tired of running, tired of being afraid, and because you deserve better than to face this alone. I've been alone for 2 years. You don't have to be alone anymore. The words hung between us. Simple. True. Kate was quiet for a long time. Then softly, why are you really here, Garrett? Truth, I told you. My wife died. Town blamed me. That's what brought you west. What brought you here, to this specific piece of cursed land nobody wanted. I stared into the fire. The truth was harder than I'd expected. Because I wanted to disappear, I said finally. Because I thought if I went somewhere remote enough, harsh enough, maybe I could stop feeling guilty for surviving when Anna didn't. And has it worked? No. But it's changed. The guilt's still there, but now there's something else too. What purpose? I looked at her. You. Kate drew in a sharp breath. Don't, she said. Don't say things like that. Why not? Because hope is dangerous. Because every time I've let myself hope, it's been taken away. I'm not going anywhere. That's what Thomas said. And then the Daltons put 6 bullets in him and left him to bleed out in a ditch. Her voice cracked on the last words. I saw tears on her cheeks reflecting firelight. I stood moved around the fire, sat beside her. She tensed but didn't move away. I can't promise nothing bad will happen, I said. Can't promise the Daltons won't try something, but I can promise I won't run. I can promise you won't face it alone. She turned to look at me. We were close now. Close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in her brown eyes. Close enough to feel the warmth of her skin. I'm afraid, she whispered. Of what? Of trusting you, of caring about you, of losing someone again. I know. I'm afraid too. We sat like that close but not touching for a long time. The fire burned down to embers. The stars wheeled overhead. And somewhere in that night, something shifted between us. Something deeper than partnership. Something that felt like the beginning of love. But the world wasn't going to give us time to explore it. The cattle disappeared on a Tuesday. I woke at dawn to find the pen empty. 30 head just gone. The gate was open but not broken. Someone had opened it deliberately. Kate was already tracking when I found her, following hoof prints in the soft earth. Daltons, she said. Has to be. How do you know? Because they're the only ones bold enough. And stupid enough. The tracks led north toward the canyon lands. Rough country full of arroyos and blind turns. Good place for an ambush. Better place to hide stolen cattle. We should get the sheriff, I said. Kate laughed bitterly. Wade, he's probably the one who unlocked the gate for them. Then what do? We get our cattle back. She said it with such certainty, such resolve that I didn't argue. We prepared carefully. Kate knew the canyon country, had explored it during her 2 years alone. She drew me a map in the dirt showing me the likely places to hide cattle. Here, she pointed. Dead Horse Canyon. Water there. Grass. Box Canyon only one way in, and if they're waiting for us, then we don't go in the front way. She showed me a path that circled around coming in from above. Steep climbing but manageable. We'd have the high ground. We left at midday. Rode double on patience. Kate had a horse when she told me, but it died the first winter after Thomas. She'd been walking everywhere since. The canyon country was beautiful in a harsh way. Red rocks sculpted by wind and water into fantastic shapes, deep shadows and brilliant light, a landscape that didn't care if you lived or died. We reached Dead Horse Canyon by late afternoon. Left Patience hidden in a side ravine. Climbed. Kate moved like a mountain goat despite her size. Sure-footed, confident. I followed, trying to keep up. By the time we reached the rim, I was winded. She wasn't. Below in the canyon were our cattle, and 5 men. I recognized the Dalton brothers from Owen's descriptions. Jake, tall and lean with Coldy son. Cole built like a bull, all muscle and menace. 3 hired guns with them. They were branding the cattle, changing the marks, making them Dalton property. Rage flooded through me, red and hot and overwhelming. Kate put a hand on my shoulder. Steady, she whispered. We're outnumbered. We need to be smart. We watched as the sun sank lower. The men built a fire, settled in for the night, passing a bottle around, getting comfortable. When it's full dark, Kate said we sneak in, Cut the cattle loose, drive them out before they know what's happening. And if they catch us, her jaw tightened. Then I stopped being gentle. We waited. The sun set in a blaze of orange and purple. The canyon filled with shadows. The men's fire became a bright point in the darkness. We climbed down, slow, silent. Kate let her size an advantage now. She could see in the darkness better than I could. We reached the canyon floor. The cattle were penned against the far wall, 20 yards from the fire, 20 yards from 5 armed men. Kate moved first, glided through the darkness like a shadow, reached the makeshift pen, started cutting the rawhide ties that held it together. I followed, helped where I could. The cattle stirred nervous, but Kate made a soft sound, almost like singing, and they calmed. We were nearly done when one of the hired guns stood, stretched, walked directly toward us. I froze. Kate grabbed my arm, pulled me down behind a boulder. The man walked past us. Couldn't have been more than 5 feet away. He stopped at the pen, looked at the cattle, then turned back toward the fire. That's when Cole Dalton stood. "Someone's cutting them loose," he shouted. The camp exploded into action. Men grabbing rifles, spreading out. "Run!" Kate hissed. "Drive them!" We burst from cover. Kate let out a roar that echoed off the canyon walls. The cattle panicked, stampeded toward the canyon mouth. Gunfire erupted. Bullets whined off rocks. I fired back, not aiming to kill, just to keep their heads down. Kate was ahead, driving the cattle with her voice and her size. They ran before her like she was a force of nature. We were almost clear when Jake Dalton stepped into the canyon mouth. He had a rifle, aimed, calm as Sunday morning. "The giant," he said, and his voice was pleased, almost happy. "You're real," he fired. The bullet missed Kate by inches. She didn't flinch, didn't slow, just kept running. Jake fired again. This shot didn't miss, caught her in the shoulder. She stumbled, but didn't fall. Rage consumed me. I turned, fired. My bullet hit the rock next to Jake's head. He dove for cover. Kate reached him first, grabbed his rifle with one hand, yanked it away, lifted Jake by his collar, held him off the ground. "You killed my husband," she said. Her voice was ice, pure, cold fury. "You chained me. You came from my land. I am done being your victim." Jake's face went from confident to terrified in seconds. "Please," he gasped. "Don't." Kate's hand tightened on his throat. I could see her struggling, could see the war inside her, the desire for revenge, the memory of Frank Dalton's neck breaking in her hands. "Kate," I said, "you're not like them. Don't become what they think you are." She looked at me, tears on her face, blood running from her shoulder. Then she dropped Jake. "Let him fall in the dirt. Leave," she said. "Tell everyone what happened. Tell them the giant widow had mercy. Tell them I could have killed you but chose not to. Tell them I'm human." Jake scrambled backward, terrified, broken. The other men had scattered. Only Cole remained, but he was frozen, staring at his brother's humiliation. "Go," Kate said again. They went, left everything. The fire, the supplies, just ran into the darkness. When they were gone, Kate swayed, the adrenaline leaving her, the wound in her shoulder bleeding freely now. I caught her as she fell, eased her down. "How bad?" she asked. "Through and through, clean. But you're losing blood. We need to get back." "We will, but first I need to bind this." I tore strips from my shirt, packed the wound front and back, tied it tight. Kate gritted her teeth but didn't cry out. "Can you ride?" she nodded. "Have to." We gathered the cattle, drove them back through the darkness. Kate rode behind me on patience, her good arm around my waist. I could feel her trembling, from pain, from shock, from the weight of what she'd almost done. We reached the ranch as the sun rose, got the cattle penned, got Kate into the barn. I cleaned the wound properly. It was bad, but not fatal. The bullet had gone through muscle, missed the bone. She'd heal. "You saved my life," I said as I worked. "Jake would have shot me if you hadn't charged him." "You saved mine first," she replied. "Reminded me who I am, what I don't want to become." "You're not a killer, Kate. I wanted to be. For just a second, I wanted to kill him. But you didn't. That's what matters." She closed her eyes, exhausted, hurting. I'm so tired, Garrett. Tired of fighting. Tired of being alone. Tired of being afraid. I know. I'm tired too. I finished bandaging, gave her whiskey for the pain, watched as she drifted into uneasy sleep. Outside, dawn painted the sky in shades of gold and pink. The cattle grazed peacefully. The ranch was quiet, but I knew it wouldn't last. The Daltons had been humiliated, made to look weak. Men like that don't forgive. They don't forget. They'd be back. And next time they'd come prepared. The weeks that followed were marked by vigilance and healing. Kate's wound mended slowly. She was restless, hating the forced inactivity. I convinced her to rest by pointing out that we needed to prepare for the next attack, and preparation required planning, which she could do from her bed. So we planned. Kate drew detailed maps of the ranch, showed me every approach, every blind spot, every advantage we had. The cottonwood grove, she explained, has tunnels underneath. Old mining tunnels from before Thomas bought the land. They connect to the creek, to the barn, to the far pasture. If we need to move unseen, we can. You've been using them for 2 years. How do you think I brought you water every morning without being seen? I smiled at that. Clever. Thomas taught me. Said a rancher needs to know every inch of his land, even what's underneath. She also revealed something else. A journal. Thomas's journal. She kept it hidden in the tunnels, wrapped in oilcloth. He left this, she said, handing it to me, for whoever came next, for whoever took over the ranch. I opened it. The pages were filled with neat handwriting, plans for the ranch, notes on the cattle, and toward the end, dated just a week before his death, a final entry. I read it aloud. If you're reading this, I'm likely dead. The Daltons want the spring tunnels. There's enough water underground to supply 10 ranches, but it's also a maze. Kate knows every tunnel. If they come for her, use the tunnels. Make them regret it. I looked up. He knew. He always knew, Kate said quietly. Knew they'd kill him eventually. He just hoped it would be later rather than sooner. Why didn't he sell, take the money, and leave? Because this was our home. Because he refused to be driven out by greedy men. Because he was stubborn and good and believed land was meant to be worked, not stolen. Her voice broke. I miss him. I set down the journal, took her hand, the same hand that had crushed Frank Dalton's throat, that had lifted wagon wheels, that had been gentle with me since the day we met. He sounds like a good man, the best, and I failed him. How I survived. He didn't. What kind of wife survives when her husband dies? The kind who was locked in chains while he was shot. Kate, you didn't fail. You were his victim too. She looked at me with ancient pain in her eyes. Then why does it feel like I should have died with him? Because grief doesn't make sense. Because survivor's guilt is real. Because you loved him, and losing someone you love breaks something inside that never quite heals. I knew these truths intimately, had lived them for 3 years after Anna. But Kate, I continued, not healing doesn't mean you can't live. Doesn't mean you can't find purpose. Doesn't mean you can't let someone else in. Are we still talking about Thomas? Maybe we're talking about both of us. She was quiet. Outside, the autumn wind rattled the barn doors. Inside, we sat close, hands joined, two broken people beginning to imagine wholeness. I need to tell you something, Kate said finally. Something I've never told anyone. All right, when Frank Dalton died, when I broke his neck, it wasn't just self-defense. He'd said things, terrible things about Thomas, about what they'd done to him before shooting him, how he'd begged, how he'd cried. She paused, swallowed hard, and I enjoyed killing him. For 2 seconds, maybe 3, I felt powerful instead of powerless, felt strong instead of victimized. And that, she looked at me, makes me a monster. No, I said firmly. It makes you human. Being angry at the people who hurt someone you loved, wanting them to pay, that's as natural as breathing. What makes you human is what you did after. You didn't become a killer. You didn't hunt down Jake and Cole. You protected this land. You showed mercy when you had every right to vengeance. You really believe that I do. She leaned her head against my shoulder, careful of her wound, but trusting. We sat like that for a long time. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For seeing me, not the stories, not the fear, just me. The first snow came early that year. October brought flakes that melted on contact, but November brought snow that stayed. The land transformed into something clean and white and new. Kate's shoulder had healed enough for light work. We prepared the ranch for winter, brought in hay for the cattle, stocked the barn and house with firewood, salted and smoked meat. Owen visited twice more, brought supplies and news. The Daltons had left town, he reported, gone to Santa Fe. Rumor was they were hiring more men, building a case with the territorial government about Kate being a public menace. How long do we have, I asked. Spring, maybe sooner if the passes stay open. We'll be ready. Owen looked at Kate, who stood nearby. She'd started coming closer during his visits, still wary but less so. Miss Brennan, he said, it's good to see you looking well. She nodded. Thank you for the supplies, Mr. Briggs. It's Owen, and you're welcome. After he left, Kate said, he's kind, like Thomas was. He was Thomas's friend, I said. I didn't know that. The town's not all bad, just scared. Owen's trying to change that, one visit at a time. Kate considered this. Maybe I should go to town, show them I'm not a monster. That's a good idea, but let's wait until spring. Let things calm down first. She agreed, but I could see her thinking about it, planning. December brought a blizzard that lasted 3 days. The world disappeared into white. We stayed in the barn, Kate and I keeping the fire going, keeping the animals fed. On the second night, we ran out of small talk, out of plans, out of everything except honesty. Can I ask you something, Kate said. Anything. Do you think about your wife every day? Does it hurt less? No, but it hurts different. At first it was sharp, like a knife. Now it's dull, like an old wound that aches when it rains. Do you feel guilty for being here, for being with me? I thought about that. Yes, I said honestly. Sometimes I feel like I'm betraying her memory by being happy, by finding purpose again. But I think she'd want me to live, really live, not just survive. Kate nodded slowly. Thomas told me once right after we married that if anything happened to him, I should find someone else. Should be happy. I told him nothing would happen. We grow old together. She smiled sadly. I was wrong. We sat in silence. The wind howled outside. The fire crackled. Somewhere in the barn, Patience shifted and snorted. I think Kate said carefully that Thomas would like you. How do you know? Because you're still here. Those words hit me harder than they should have. Simple words, true words. I'm not going anywhere, I said. Everyone says that. I know, but I mean it. She looked at me then, really looked. And I saw something in her eyes. Something vulnerable and terrified and hopeful all at once. Garrett, she said, I need to ask you something. It's going to sound strange. Try me. She took a breath. When Frank Dalton died, when they came for me after Thomas, they put something on me. A torture device, iron bands, round my thighs, to keep me from running while they killed my husband. I felt ice in my gut. Kate, the scars healed wrong. I can't see them properly. Can't reach them all the way. And with spring coming, with the Daltons coming back, I need to know if they'll split open if I have to fight. She paused, met my eyes. I need you to look. I need you to touch me there, to tell me if I'm whole enough for what's coming. And please don't stop until you've checked everything. Because if I'm going to bleed, I need to know now. The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning, with trust, with vulnerability. This wasn't about intimacy, not the kind people whisper about. This was about survival, about a woman who had been tortured, asking for help from someone she was learning to trust. I'll look, I said gently. But Kate, you're already whole. Scars don't change that. I need to know. Then I'll help you know. She stood, removed her outer skirt with shaking hands. Underneath, she wore simple undergarments, and there on her thighs I saw them. The scars were terrible. Thick bands of damaged tissue 4 inches wide circling both thighs. The skin was discolored, puckered. The marks of iron that had been locked on tight for days. I moved closer, examined them carefully. Gently touched the scarred flesh, checking for weak points, for places that might tear. Kate stood very still, but I heard her breathing change, saw tears falling. How long were you locked in those, I asked. 4 days, while they hunted Thomas, while they shot him, while he died and I couldn't reach him. Her voice broke. I'm sorry, I said. I'm so sorry. I continued my examination. Professional, clinical. The scars were thick but stable, healed clean despite the circumstances. Finally, I stood, looked her in the eyes. They're healed solid, strong, they won't split. You can fight, you can run, you can do whatever you need. Are you sure I'm sure? Kate's legs gave out. She sat heavily sobbing, deep wrenching squeeze that seemed to come from her core. I sat beside her, didn't touch, just stayed close. I'm sorry, she gasped between sobs. I'm sorry. I just needed to know. It's all right. No one's touched me there since it happened. No one's even seen. And I've been so afraid that I'm broken, that I'm damaged beyond fixing. You're not broken. She looked at me, her face wet with tears. How do you know? Because I see you and you're whole. Scarred, yes. Hurt, yes, but whole. She leaned against me then. Let me hold her while she cried. And something shifted in that moment. Some final wall between us crumbled. When the crying stopped, when her breathing steadied, she spoke. Can you stay close tonight? I don't want to be alone. I'm not going anywhere. We lay down together, not for passion, for comfort, for warmth, for the simple human need to not be alone in the darkness. I held her. She let me. And for the first time in 2 years, Kate Brennan slept without nightmares. The blizzard passed. The world emerged white and clean and new. We didn't speak about that night. Didn't need to. Some things exist beyond words. But everything was different now. The careful distance was gone. Kate moved into the house. Her own room, yes, but under the same roof. We ate meals together, sat by the fire in the evenings, talked about everything and nothing. We were becoming something. Not quite lovers, more than friends. Two people learning to trust again, learning to hope. Christmas came. We didn't celebrate much, but I carved her a small figure from cottonwood, a horse, simple but detailed. She held it like it was precious. Thank you, she said. I couldn't think what to get you. You've given me everything that matters. What's that? A reason to stop hiding. New Year's came and went. 1888 arrived cold and clear. In January, a rider came. Not Owen. A woman, young, maybe 30. She rode side saddle proper, but with a rifle across her lap. Kate and I met her in the yard. Mr. Thorne, Miss Brennan, she called. Her voice was educated. Eastern. That's us, I replied. She dismounted, extended her hand to me, then to Kate. Kate shook it, careful of her strength. I'm Rebecca Harris, the woman said. I'm new to Blackstone, opened a dress shop 2 months ago. Welcome, I said, confused about why she was here. Rebecca smiled. It was a sad smile. I'm also a widow. My husband died last year. She paused, used to hurt me, beat me when he'd been drinking, which was often. I'm sorry, Kate said quietly. Don't be, I'm not. Rebecca looked directly at Kate. I came because I heard about you, about what you did to the Daltons, how you fought back. And I wanted you to know, she took a breath, that not everyone in town is afraid of you. Some of us think you're exactly what this place needs. Kate stared at her. You're not afraid of a woman who refuses to be a victim, who stands up to men who deserve standing up to. Rebecca shook her head. No, I'm inspired. That word inspired seemed to shake something loose in Kate. She smiled, a real smile. Thank you. Rebecca stayed for coffee. We sat on the porch despite the cold, talked about the town, about the Daltons, about the fear that governs so much of frontier life. When she left, she promised to visit again, to bring other women who wanted to meet Kate. As we watched her ride away, Kate said, I didn't know anyone thought of me that way. The world's changing, I said, slowly. But it's changing. Maybe there's hope. There's always hope. We stood together, watching the horizon. And I knew with absolute certainty that whatever came next, we would face it together. Spring came to New Mexico like a whisper that turned into a shout. First, the snow melted streams running high and wild. Then the grass greened overnight, transforming the brown earth into something alive and hopeful. The cattle grew fat on the new growth. The sheep lambed, and Kate Brennan, for the first time in 3 years, smiled without sadness behind it. We'd spent the winter building, not just structures, though we'd done that too. We'd built trust, built partnership, built something that it felt dangerously close to happiness. By March, the ranch was thriving. We had 60 head of cattle now purchased with money from the wool and some careful trading. The fences were solid. The barn was weatherproof. The house had become a home. And Kate had started to change. Not physically. She was still 8.5 feet of careful strength, but something in her had softened. She laughed more, spoke more freely, touched me without flinching, small gestures that meant everything. A hand on my shoulder, fingers brushing mine as we passed tools, her head resting against me in the evening as we watched the sun set. We hadn't kissed, hadn't crossed that line, but it hung between us, inevitable and terrifying, and wanted. One morning in late March, Kate said, "I want to go to town." I looked up from mending a bridle. "Are you sure?" "No, but I'm tired of hiding, tired of letting fear make my decisions." Owen says the mood shifted. More people know Rebecca, know her story. They're curious, not hostile. Then maybe it's time. We rode in together on a Saturday, Kate on a draft horse Owen had found for her, big enough to carry her weight. Me on Patience, side by side like equals. Blackstone hadn't changed much in 6 months. Same dusty street, same weathered buildings. But as we rode in, I saw curtains twitch, faces in windows, people stopping to stare. Kate held her head high, didn't shrink, didn't hide. We tied our horses outside Owen's store. He came out immediately, face breaking into a genuine smile. "Miss Brennan," he said, bowing slightly, "it's an honor to see you in town." "Mr. Briggs," she replied, "thank you for the welcome." A crowd was gathering, not angry, just curious, watching this giant woman walk into their midst like it was the most natural thing in the world. Rebecca appeared from her dress shop across the street. She was carrying something, a shawl, beautiful blue wool. "I made this for you," she said to Kate, "as thanks for showing me what strength looks like." Kate took it with shaking hands. "It's beautiful, like the woman wearing it." That's when Sheriff Wade arrived. He pushed through the crowd, hand on his gun. His face was hard, unreadable. "Miss Brennan," he said, "you're disturbing the peace." I felt Kate tense beside me, felt her preparing to run, to hide, to become small. But I stepped forward. "Sheriff, she's buying supplies same as anyone. She ain't like anyone." "No," a voice said. "She's not." I turned. The voice belonged to Rebecca, but she wasn't alone. Behind her stood 10 women, townswomen of all ages, standing together. Rebecca continued, her voice carrying, "She's stronger, braver. She survived things that would break most of us. Sheriff Wade, her husband died protecting this town from thieves. Show some respect." The crowd murmured, agreement rippling through. Wade's hand moved away from his gun. His face reddened. He looked around, saw the mood shifting, saw that he was outnumbered not by strength but by sentiment. "Fine," he said curtly, "but any trouble and she's gone." "Understood." "Understood," Kate said quietly. Wade stalked away. The crowd began to disperse, but not before several women approached Kate, touched her hand, thanked her for being brave. One old woman, weathered and wise-looking, said, "My granddaughter's tall too, 6 feet already at 14. She thinks she's a monster. I'm going to tell her about you. Tell her that tall women can be anything they choose." Kate's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you. We spent 2 hours in town. Kate bought fabric for new dresses. I bought tools. We had lunch at the boarding house, sitting at a table by the window where everyone could see. Some people stared. Some whispered. But no one threatened. No one threw stones. As we rode home that afternoon, Kate was quiet, lost in thought. "What are you thinking?" I asked. "That maybe the world's bigger than I thought. That maybe there's room in it for someone like me. There's always been room. You just had to step into it." She smiled. "I couldn't have done it without you." "Yes, you could have. You just needed a reason." "You're my reason." The words hung in the air between us, heavy with meaning. When we reached the ranch, when the sun was setting and painting everything gold, Kate turned to me. Her face was serious. "Garrett, I need to tell you something." "All right, I think I'm falling in love with you, and it terrifies me." My heart hammered in my chest. "Why terrifying?" "Because everyone I've loved has been taken from me. My parents, Thomas. I can't bear to lose someone else. You won't lose me. You can't promise that." "No, but I can promise I'll fight like hell to stay. And Kate, I'm falling in love with you too." She drew in a sharp breath. "Really, really." We stood there in the fading light, two people who'd been broken, finding wholeness in each other. "Can I try something?" Kate asked. "Anything." She leaned down. I stood on the porch step, raising myself to her height. Our faces were level now. I want to kiss you, she whispered. But I'm afraid of what? That I'll be too much, too clumsy, that I'll ruin it. You couldn't ruin anything if you tried. She closed the distance between us. Her lips met mine, gentle, tentative, perfect. The kiss lasted only seconds, but it changed everything. When we pulled apart, Kate was crying. I've been waiting 2 years to do that, she said. Was it worth the wait? Every second. We stood together as the sun set completely, as stars emerged one by one, as the world turned dark and beautiful around us. And for the first time in 3 years, I felt something I thought I'd lost forever. Hope. The happiness lasted 3 weeks. In mid-April, Owen rode out with news. His face was grim. The Daltons are back, he said, and they brought friends. How many? Jake Cole and 6 hired guns, professional killers from Texas. They're camped north of town waiting for what. Owen pulled out a folded paper, handed it to me. For this, I opened it. It was a legal document, dense with language I barely understood, but the gist was clear. A petition to the territorial governor declaring Kate a public menace, requesting her arrest and commitment to an asylum. They can't do this, I said. They can if Wade backs them. And he will. They're paying him $5,000. When 3 days. They're giving you 3 days to convince Kate to leave voluntarily. After that, they're coming with a legal warrant. I looked at Kate. She'd been standing nearby listening. Her face was pale but composed. I'm not leaving, she said. I know. Then we fight. Owen shook his head. You can't fight the law, even if it's corrupt law. Then what do we do? I asked. Rebecca's idea, Owen said. She's organizing. The women who supported Kate in town. They're coming here, tomorrow, to stand witness. Make it harder for Wade to act without consequences. Will it work? Owen shrugged. Maybe, maybe not. But it's a better chance than fighting. Kate walked away, headed toward the cottonwoods. I followed. She stood by Thomas's grave, looking down at the wooden cross. I won't run, she said without turning. I've run enough, I know. But I won't fight either. Won't become the monster they think I am. So what do we do? She turned to face me. We stand, together, and we trust that truth matters. Does it? In my experience, power matters more than truth. Maybe. But I have to believe otherwise. Because if truth doesn't matter, if standing up doesn't matter, then Thomas died for nothing. I took her hand. Then we stand. And whatever happens, we face it together. The next day, Rebecca arrived with 15 women. They set up camp on our land visible from the road. A silent protest. A witness. Owen brought supplies. Food, water, blankets. He also brought news. Wade's furious, he said. Says you're harboring a criminal. That this is obstruction. Kate's not a criminal, I replied. Tell that to the judge. Owen's face was grave. They've scheduled a hearing. Day after tomorrow in town. Wade will present the petition. Kate will have to defend herself. Will she get a fair hearing? Doubtful. But it's better than being dragged off in chains. That night, Kate and I sat by the fire in the Cottonwood Grove. The same fire where we'd first talked months ago. Where we'd built trust from nothing. I'm scared, she admitted. Me too. What if they take me? What if they lock me up? Then I'll break you out. She smiled despite everything. My outlaw. Your partner. We sat in silence, then Kate spoke again. Garrett, if they do take me, I need you to promise something. Anything. Don't let them sell the land. Keep it. Work it. Build the life we talked about. Kate, we're not giving up, I know. But promise anyway. I promise, she leaned against me. We sat like that until dawn, holding each other in the darkness, trying to steal strength from proximity. The hearing was scheduled for 10 in the morning. We rode into town early. Kate, me, Rebecca, and 10 of the women who'd camped at our ranch. The courthouse was packed. Seemed like the whole town had turned out. Some curious, some hostile, some supportive. Jake Dalton sat in the front row with Cole. Both looked confident, smug. Sheriff Wade stood beside a man I didn't recognize. Tall, thin, with the look of someone who made his living with words instead of work. That's Judge Harlan, Owen whispered. From Santa Fe. Wade's pocket judge. The hearing began. Wade presented his case. Called Kate a public menace. a dangerous giant who'd killed a man and threatened the peace. He had witnesses, hired guns who swore Kate had attacked them unprovoked. It was all lies, but it sounded convincing. Then it was our turn. I spoke first, told the truth about the cattle raid, about the Daltons' ambush, about Kate defending herself. Then Rebecca stood. She held a stack of papers. Written testimonies from 12 townspeople, people who'd known Thomas, who'd seen the Daltons' cruelty, who witnessed Kate's kindness. Judge Harlan barely looked at them. Finally, Kate stood. The room went silent. She was the tallest person there by 3 feet, imposing and powerful and terrifying if you didn't know her. But when she spoke, her voice was gentle. "I'm not asking for pity," she said. "I'm asking for justice. I killed Frank Dalton. That's true. I killed him because he and his brothers murdered my husband, because they locked iron bands around my legs and left me helpless while Thomas bled out, because when they came back for me, I chose to fight instead of die." She paused, let the words sink in. "You want to call that murder? Go ahead. I call it survival. I call it refusing to be a victim. I call it being human." The judge banged his gavel. "That's enough." "No, sir, it's not." Kate's voice grew stronger. "You want to lock me up because I'm different, because I'm tall and strong and won't bow down. But different isn't dangerous. Fear is dangerous. Corruption is dangerous. Men who kill for water rights are dangerous. I stood my ground when everyone wanted me gone. I worked land that was legally mine. I defended myself when attacked. If that makes me a monster, then I'm proud to be one." The courtroom erupted, some people shouting support, others demanding she be silenced. Judge Harlan banged his gavel repeatedly. "Order, order," the room quieted. The judge looked at Kate with undisguised contempt. "Miss Brennan, based on the evidence presented, I find you to be a threat to public safety. You are hereby remanded to the custody of Sheriff Wade, pending transfer to the Territorial Asylum in Santa Fe." "No," Rebecca shouted. She jumped to her feet. "This is a travesty." "Sit down," the judge ordered. But several other women stood, then more. Within seconds, half of the courtroom was standing, a wall of silent protest. Wade moved toward Kate, handcuffs ready. That's when the door burst open. A man stood there, not tall, not imposing, just ordinary. But he carried himself with authority. "Federal Marshal William Cross," he announced, "and I'm shutting down this proceeding." The room exploded into chaos. Marshal Cross walked to the front, presented papers to the judge. "I have warrants for Avrams for the arrest of Sheriff Clayton Wade and Jake Dalton. Charges include murder, bribery, corruption of public office, and attempted theft of federal land." "Federal land," the judge sputtered. "The underground spring on the Brennan property was surveyed last year as part of territorial water rights assessment. It's protected federal resource, which means the Daltons' attempt to acquire it through violence constitutes federal crime." Cross turned to Wade. "You're under arrest, Sheriff." Wade's hand went to his gun. Foolish move. Cross was faster. Had his pistol aimed before Wade could clear leather. "Don't," Cross said calmly. Wade surrendered. Cross's deputies arrested Jake and Cole Dalton next. They went quietly, shock on their faces. "As for you," Cross said to Judge Harlan, "I'd recommend recusing yourself from territorial service before I file a formal complaint." The judge gathered his papers and fled. The courtroom was silent. Stunned, Cross turned to Kate. "Miss Brennan," he said, "on behalf of the territorial government, I apologize. You've been grievously wronged. The charges are dismissed. Your land rights are confirmed, and you have my word that no one will trouble you again." Kate stood frozen, unable to process what had just happened. "How?" she finally asked. "Owen Briggs," Cross said. "He wrote to my office 3 months ago. Detailed everything, the murder, the corruption, the land grab. I investigated. Found he was right about all of it." Kate looked at Owen. He shrugged, embarrassed. "Thomas was my friend. I owed him justice." Tears streamed down Kate's face. "Thank you." The town erupted in celebration. People who'd been too scared to speak out were suddenly brave. They surrounded Kate, offering congratulations, apologies, support. And in the midst of it all, I found Jake Dalton's eyes on me. He looked broken, defeated, but also something else. Relieved, as if being caught was better than continuing the lie. The weeks after the trial were marked by rebuilding. Not just structures, but community. People from town started visiting, bringing gifts, offering help, asking Kate's advice on everything from difficult births to water divining to settling disputes. She became, without planning it, a kind of unofficial judge. People trusted her fairness, her strength, her refusal to be corrupted. Rebecca moved on to the ranch, opened a school in a building we constructed together. Within a month, she had 20 students. Within 340, the outcast came too. A Chinese family fleeing discrimination in Colorado, a former saloon girl escaping an abusive life, an elderly black man who'd been run out of 3 towns. We gave them all land, asked only that they work it and respect each other. The ranch transformed, from a lonely outpost to a thriving community, a refuge for anyone the world had forgotten. And through it all, Kate bloomed. She laughed freely now, spoke her mind, led with confidence. One evening, 6 months after the trial, she took me to Thomas's grave. "I want to do something," she said. "Something I should have done years ago." "What's that?" "Let go." She knelt by the grave, removed the black mourning sash she still wore sometimes, placed it gently on the ground. "Thomas," she said softly, "I want you to meet someone. His name is Garrett. He's good, like you were, but different too. He doesn't try to fix me. He just stands with me." She paused. "I think I'm ready to stop being your widow now, not stop loving you, but stop living in the past. Is that okay?" The wind rustled through the cottonwoods, like an answer, like permission. Kate stood, turned to me. "He would have liked you." "How do you know?" "Because you're still here." That night we sat on the porch of the house we'd built together, larger than the original, with high ceilings and wide doors, with room for everyone. "I've been thinking," I said. "Dangerous habit." I smiled. "About what we build next. This ranch has become something bigger than either of us planned. A real community. What if we make it official? How a charter, legal recognition, protection for everyone who lives here. A place where being different isn't a curse." Kate was quiet. "Then a sanctuary." "Exactly, I like it. But Garrett, I need to ask you something first." "Anything." She took my hand. "Will you marry me?" I stared at her. "I know it's forward," she continued quickly. "I know traditionally the man asks. But I'm not traditional, and neither are you, and I'm tired of waiting for the right moment, because this is the right moment. Every moment with you is right." She took a breath. "So will you marry me? Garrett Thorne? Will you build this sanctuary with me? Will you stand beside me for whatever years we have left?" I couldn't speak, couldn't find words adequate to the feeling flooding through me. So I kissed her instead. When we finally pulled apart, both breathless, I said yes. To all of it. Yes. We married in September, simple ceremony under the cottonwoods. Owen officiated, Rebecca stood as witness. The entire community attended. Kate wore white, a dress Rebecca had sewn, specially using 15 yards of silk. She looked radiant, powerful, beautiful. I wore my best suit, felt small beside her, and didn't care. When Owen asked for vows, I spoke first. "I promise to see you, not the stories, not the fear, just you. I promise to stand with you in a joy and sorrow. I promise to build instead of breaking, and I promise to love you until my last breath." Kate's turn. Her voice was steady despite the tears. "I promise to stay, not hide, not run. I promise to be brave when you need me, strong and vulnerable when you need me, human. I promise to share this life we're building, and I promise to love you in all the ways love can be shown." Owen pronounced us married. The community erupted in celebration. We danced, or tried to. The height difference made it comical. But we found a rhythm. Always did. That night in the room we now shared, Kate said, "I didn't think I could be this happy again." Neither did I. We lay together holding each other in the darkness. Two broken people made whole through choice and effort and love. And tomorrow, Kate whispered, we start building for real. Tomorrow, I agreed. Spring came again. Our second together. The ranch prospered. The school grew. The community expanded. Kate was pregnant by May. She told me one morning while we were working, just said it casually like she was commenting on the weather. "I'm carrying our child." I dropped the fence post I was holding. "What?" She smiled. "Pregnant. About 3 months. How long have you known?" "A month." Wanted to be sure before I said anything. Kate, are you happy I grabbed her? Lifted her off the ground. She laughed, delighted. When I set her down, I said, terrified and thrilled and so happy I could burst. Good, because I'm all those things too. The pregnancy was difficult. Kate's size made everything complicated, but she was strong, determined. We prepared, built a nursery, made small furniture, hoped. In October, she went into labor. It lasted 18 hours. Rebecca attended along with two women who'd birthed their own children. I was there too, holding Kate's hand, trying not to faint. When the baby finally came, when that first cry split the air, I wept. A son. Small by Kate's standards, normal size by mine. Perfect. We named him Thomas. After the man who'd loved Kate first, who'd shown her she deserved love. Kate held him, marveling. He's so tiny. He's perfect. Our little miracle. The years that followed were good years. Hard, sometimes challenging, often, but good. We had three more children. Jacob, who grew to be 7 feet 2. Samuel, 6 feet even. Mary, normal height. The ranch became famous. People traveled to see the community of outcasts who'd built something beautiful from nothing. Kate became a legend. The giant widow who'd stood against corruption and won. Who'd built a sanctuary. Who'd shown that different wasn't dangerous. But to me, she was just Kate, my wife, my partner. The woman who'd saved me as much as I'd saved her. We grew old together, slower than we'd like, but together nonetheless. And now sitting here by the fire in 1917, 67 years old, with gray in my beard and ache in my bones, I can look back on 30 years since I first met Kate, nearly 30 years married to her, and know one thing for certain. Love isn't about fitting together perfectly. It's about choosing each other anyway. My daughter Mary's been listening this whole time, tears in her eyes. That's beautiful, Pa, she says. It's true. Is that why you told me the whole story? I nod. You asked how your mama and I met, but what you really wanted to know is how we made it work. A giant woman and an ordinary man. How we built a life when the world said it was impossible. And I look out the window. Kate's there walking across the field with our grandchildren. 7 of them now, ranging from toddlers to teenagers. She's 64, gray-haired, still tall, still strong, still beautiful. We made it work, I say, because we saw each other. Really saw each other. Not what the world said we should be. Not what fear told us we were. Just who we actually were. 2 broken people who chose to heal together. Mary hugs me. Thanks for the story, Pa. After she leaves, I sit by the fire a while longer, thinking about that first night, the shadow walking around the house, the water left on the porch, the woman hiding in the cottonwoods. If someone had told me then that I'd spend 30 years with Kate, have 4 children, build a community that would outlast us both, I wouldn't have believed them. But life surprises you, if you let it. The door opens. Kate enters, grandchildren clustering around her like birds. She sees me, smiles. Telling stories again, she asks, just the one that matters. She settles into her chair. The one I built for her that first week, still sturdy after 30 years. The children beg for a story. Kate obliges, tells them about the time she fought a tornado, about the town that learned not to fear her, about love that grew from trust. I listen content. This is my life. These are my people. This is the sanctuary we built from nothing. And as the fire burns low and the children drift asleep, and Kate's hand finds mine in the darkness, I think about what I'd say to that broken man who rode into Blackstone 30 years ago. I'd tell him, keep going. The road gets harder before it gets easier. But at the end, you'll find something worth all the pain. You'll find home. You'll find love. You'll find yourself. Outside, the New Mexico night is clear and cold. Stars brilliant overhead. The land breathing quiet beneath them. And inside, surrounded by family, I close my eyes and give thanks. For second chances. For broken pieces that fit together. For a woman who taught me that strength comes in all sizes. For Kate. Always for Kate.